In the way that consumers are finding properties and researching properties and finding agents, my experience is that AI citations, not necessarily AI itself is shaking up everything, but AI citations are changing up a lot of things. If you had asked me, a year ago, where do people get the most inaccurate information from? I'd be like Google. You ask me today, it's gonna be like ChatGPT is a great tool, right? But the 20% of the time that it's wrong, it is really wrong.
So today we have Alex Mayer. He is a multi-award winning real estate agent specializing in Rochester, Minnesota market. He's operating under the direct representation model where he works personally with his clients. He specializes in first-time home buyers, relocating professionals, and local sellers. He's also a co-author of the 2024 Amazon bestseller Top Producer Secrets. Alex, thank you so much for your time and make yourself at home.
Happy to be here.
So, I've talked to a lot of different agents, and we talk to a lot of different agents coast to coast. What I always want to know is what initially sparked your drive to build a career in real estate and what continues to fuel your passion today. So, it's a two-parter.
Yeah. I was actually recruited into real estate back in 16. So I tell people don't hold it against me, but I was in auto sales before I got into real estate. I planned to stay in auto sales for about 3 years, but I quickly became the top salesperson at the dealership. And then one of my managers there was close friends with the top agent team, and we'll talk about teams later, in the city of Rochester. And he actually came in and recruited me into the business. So I ended up joining the top team here in the Rochester, Minnesota area shortly after that. Did really well. That team actually disbanded about months later. He made too much money, checked out. So then I went over and I worked at a local boutique brokerage as a solo agent. I did run a team for about 3.5 years. I realized that was there's this big lie in real estate that running a team is really where all the money is at. And then you become a broker. Really, I felt like I was the one still producing most of the business, and it actually detracted from the amount of time that I could spend with my clients. So I actually axed that back in 2023. I joined another brokerage, decided to go solo and stay solo. And that's how I decided to build the direct representation model. The things that, I'm passionate about today, my core values are education, communication, responsiveness. So I'm huge on making sure that my clients know not just the what, but the why, and then what is actively working in the market. One of the things that people will hear me say often is that the short answer to every question in real estate is it depends. And almost everything, and there's no real this is the deciding factor every time, right? Like it depends on the situation, depends on your situation, depends on where the market's at, depends on what's working in that current moment. And then responsiveness is making myself available to my clients. I always say that, if you call me 4 out of 5 times, I will pick up the phone. On the 5th time that I don't answer, I will call you back quickly. I do have a conversation with my younger clients that responsiveness does not mean immediate. It means that I will be in touch with you. I'm not going to leave you hanging, right? And communication is just explaining things in an easy to understand way, right? There's a lot of lingo, a lot of jargon in our industry, and a lot of the consumers don't really know what that means. And I want them to know it kind of an easier path. If I really were to summarize it down into what makes me passionate about real estate, it's really seeing the click in my clients' eyes as they come to some sort of new understanding or perspective on how this all really fits together. Before we jumped on here, we were talking about there's a lot of misinformation, there's some misassumptions, there's some inaccurate information available online, and it really can trip up the consumer if they're getting information from a bad source, a bad place. I've seen, YouTube videos, TikTok videos where, people will explain something like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. And it's like, well, yes, that exists, but it's kind of like that Dumb and Dumber meme where it's like, so you're telling me there's a chance that this is or I'll have someone reach out to me and they're like, oh, I'm an investor. And I'm like, oh, well, how many investment properties do you own? Well, none. I'm like, okay, well, then you're not an investor yet. You know what goes into buying a foreclosure home? Do you know what goes into those things? Because it's not as simple as I'm just going to put 0% down and I'm going to be able to buy a house for 50% off. You read too many Robert Kiyosaki books. That's not realistic in the marketplace. And making sure people have proper under expectations and understandings of what's actually working. It's critical to their success. And that is what I'm passionate about, is making sure people understand what's really working and then understanding it.
So, if there was a golden rule for buyers to understand before they even opened a real estate app, what would it be?
You have to have a thorough understanding and perspective of what's working in the market at the current time. And the way that you do that is you do your research on the agent that you hire. Okay. I'm a big believer that, you can't just go on to these third party websites or just go to a blockbuster brokerage website and then just pick an agent out of a hat. That in most markets, 3% of agents are doing 40% of the business. Right. And the top 13% are doing about 80% of it. Right. So when someone tells me my friend's a real estate agent, well, first off, most of my friends are real estate agents, but also that doesn't necessarily mean anything as far as production count goes. So when I talk to consumers about, finding the right agent to hire in their market or what have you, it's, making sure that you make sure that they are experienced, not just in like, I've been licensed 27 years, right? Like that's great, but if you're only doing 7 deals a year, like that's not necessarily the same as an agent who's doing 40 plus transactions a year. Right. And then also making sure that the agent that you're hiring online, and I'm big on this one, the agent you're hiring is actually going to be the agent representing you. That's how I built the direct representation model. I've always said that, my main competitors aren't other direct solo agents. They're large teams, because they're essentially, what they're doing is they got one head agent and then they got a dozen or more. There's one team in Rochester where I serve where they got 30 agents. And they're like, we do 200, I do 200 transactions a year. I'm like, no, you don't. Dividing 200 by 30 shows your average agent's doing about 8, right? You and I know that there's really probably 3, 4 real producers in that team that's doing the bulk of the business, right? But a consumer who's just going on and they register and reach out to the top team who transaction stuffs every transaction in a one agent's name. And then if they do hire that agent, they get pawned off to a more junior or less experienced agent. You're not actually getting that same level of representation as you are with a direct representation agent who only, does their transactions and that's what they put out there. So number one biggest mistake that I've seen people do is, I would say, probably reaching out to the listing agent directly. It's either number one, number two, and then just registering randomly online and not doing research on the agent that you're actually hiring. And both of those two things really come down to the paramount thing, which is making sure you understand what's actively working in the market that you're serving it, that you are working in, that you're looking to buy or sell in. Because if you're just going in and you're hiring someone who paid for some leads online or go after some large team where you're going to get pawned off, like, does that agent that's representing you actually have experience in the marketplace to give you good, reliable advice? If you look at the statistics online, I haven't looked at the most recent ones, but in 2024, they said, according to the National Association of Realtors, the average real estate agent does 3.92 transactions a year. And you and I know there's a buy side and there's a sell side to a transaction. So if you're a buyer and you're working with an agent who does less than 4 deals a year, that means they haven't represented a buyer in 6 months. That's a big change in experience, right? Like, experience is partially transaction count, partially making sure that agent's the one representing you and you're not getting passed off to somebody else. So making sure you're looking at their experience online, read some reviews, right? Like you should definitely look at the reviews of the agent that you're hiring before you do anything. And then sit down with that agent, and they should take time to explain things to you upfront, in my opinion. Here in the state of Minnesota, with the lawsuit that happened back in 2024 that now requires written agreements for representation before you even see houses, in the state of Minnesota, that was required since 2016. So for us, this was business as usual, right? An agent who is serious about representing you isn't going to just go out there and show you a house anyways. They're going to make sure you understand what's happening before you do that. Set the table before you sit down to dinner. Figure out, where everything's going to work and how it's going to come together. Be pre-approved, understand the market, and then have a plan of action for going out there. When I'm representing buyers, I believe that my clients have 6 times better results in negotiations because they know what to expect when we are out there looking at houses. They know some of the good and the bad about what goes into making an offer for multiple offers, right? They understand what could happen in the transaction, from earnest money, inspections, appraisals, financing contingencies, title work, insurances. What happens when we get a hailstorm? What are some of these possibilities that can come up? And again, short answer is it depends. Even we see new things all the time. All
I tell my clients every day, I learn something new. And when I stop learning, I probably will stop breathing. But one of the things that we try to preface every single person who comes in is you're building a team. You're the boss. But what does every boss want? They want to surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are in their industry or in their specification of that area. So you're always wanting to build your team. So when it comes to hiring a real estate agent, you are hiring a real estate agent. So you need to know who you're hiring. Who are you working with? And the 2025 statistics that came out the beginning of this year from NAR were 85% of real estate agents do 0 to 4 transactions per year. 85%. That means the other 15% are doing anything over 4 transactions. If you start getting into, the 20 transactions or more, that's less than 1.5% of the real estate agents that are out there, realtors. So when you're building these teams, I tell people, I said, not everybody's going to mesh with you, and that's okay. It takes all kinds. I know I work with all kinds of different agents, and that agent may not necessarily be my best friend, but I always tell them, I said, we can always figure it out. Everything is figure outable. Everything. You can always come to some kind of resolution to get you where you want to be. And if you can't, that's the time you need to have somebody in your back pocket who knows how to get you out for as little as absolutely possible. And that's what a real estate agent's job is. We, as you said, in Minnesota, you had agency or direct representation since 2016. In the state of North and South Carolina, we've had agency, which is buyer representation and seller representation, where we know that in some states it is transactional representation. So one agent can do both sides. Well, we've had separate agencies for more than 40 years. So you have to know, if you're a seller, you're listing your home, you may not want the best buying agent out there. And if that's all they do, no shade on them. That's awesome if that's how they built their business. But if you're listing a home, do you really want a buyer's agent to help you list your home, or do you want the best listing agent? And you have to have somebody who can help you build, like you said, not just your agent, but your lender, your title, your attorney. We're attorney driven down here. So it really is about setting up your attorney. Where I know other states, Washington State is one that they have title offices. They don't use attorney. So it just depends on the state that you're in. Since you believe in direct representation so much, in an industry full of all these mega teams, how does a direct one-on-one representation model actually protect a buyer's investment?
So one of the things I hear, or if you don't, a misassumption, I should say, that I see a lot with teams is teams will say, we are more available to you as a client because we have a dozen other people that can be available to show you the house. And they might have a dozen people, but how many of them are full-time real estate agents? Of those, how many of them are in that 85% that don't do any business, right? You really got 1, 2, maybe three top producers on that 12-person team, right? Do you think that top producing agent's going to be the one representing you, or you think it's likely you're going to get passed off to somebody else, right? I have a great brand here in the city of Rochester. In the city of Rochester, I've won Best Real Estate Agent 4 years in a row. I've got over 300 5-star reviews. I have a really robust brand marketing strategy. My dogs are in everything. We got billboards, buses, coasters, radio advertising. We're working on TV now, gym ads. So when I am representing clients, I spend my time actually representing clients. Most agents are spending 40 to 50% of their time out there chasing business, calling leads, right? Trying door knocking, hosting open houses, whatever it is to try to get clients. They're spending so much time doing that, which is what those large teams are doing because they got to keep feeding the beast. I know a lot of large teams. I know what they go through. I ran a team for 3 years. I talked to them. I'm friends with some of the top agents who run teams here in the city of Rochester. And I know that they need to churn over 5 to 6 sales a month to pay their bills, right? That is a lot, right? And that's not necessarily sustainable if they run into a situation where their 6 to 7 other agents aren't actually doing business. So the availability thing, I always tell people they spend a lot of time chasing clients, which is not representing the client specifically, right? I've eliminated that because I have a good brand. I show up on AI citations. I have a large following of 150 people that are in my referral base that regularly will recommend me clients because I've built those relationships over years, right? Really 20% of our time is actually representing clients in the purchase and sale of real estate. Right. That's really, I would say that is a really good estimate of how much time we're actually spending with our clients. The other 30% is doing paperwork, following up with lenders, title companies, making sure the agent on the other side's doing their job, handling things like that. And the way that I built my model is I have a fully licensed assistant who handles those things on the back end. Now, I work with my clients directly. She's just running things on the back end, making sure things don't get the ball dropped. I talk to her every day, making sure that things are going the right way, and we make sure things don't get dropped. But when people tell me, well, the large teams, they're more available, I'm like, not really, right? The number one agent, the head agent on that team is managing all these other agents and all the little fires that they're going through, and they're distancing their time. So when I ran a team for 3.5 years, I probably spent 20, 25 hours a week working with my clients, and then 20, 25 hours a week helping my agents put out fires and managing and going through all that stuff. I decided to X this and focus on the stuff that's actually helping my clients. And the model works because I'm not chasing clients. I'm working directly with my clients who are reaching out to me directly. Referrals, all this different branding and stuff that we have out there, people that I know, SOI, we call them in our industry, right? And then all the stuff on the back end is handled by the assistants. Now, clearly, the big thing that I think is a problem with some of these agents who maybe aren't doing as much business. And I don't want to keep attacking teams. Just we know most agents don't do a lot of business, right? Like is they don't have the experience necessary to give you advice on what's working in that current market. But then what happens when a problem comes up? 30% of real estate transactions will go through some sort of turbulence, rough air, whatever you want to call it, right? And I've always told people that as a real estate agent, we are your shock absorbers when problems come up, right? And I don't want to get into the thing where sometimes, clients will make a mountain out of a molehill, right? Like, oh my gosh, they want me to remove the wall mount. There's going to be holes. Oh no, right? But I'm talking about like when bigger things come up. We had some hail damage. We got a leak in the roof. The appraisal came in, $10,000 less, or we got a bunch of work orders, or hey, we're running into some financing issues with this lender. We got to switch and pivot to different lender because it's not working out in this situation. What happens when those problems come up? Because if you're working with a less experienced agent, it could be a situation where that agent has tried nothing and they're fresh out of ideas, right? And you don't want to be in that situation. Now, there's regularly, things that you and I run into that are new, right? And I have a policy where I say I run towards bad news. When bad things happen, you're going to know about it right away. But I try to come at you with a few solutions and some possibilities of what's going to happen. Now, there's a lot of unknown in real estate. I don't know what's going to happen, right? We got to have a roof inspection because the appraiser flagged it for a few missing shingles. Well, does that mean we're going to have to replace the roof? Could happen. It's a possibility. We don't know yet. Let's let that person tell us what the situation is and we'll figure it out from there. Right. And one of the problems I run into, like sometimes someone's like, oh, my buddy's a real estate agent. Well, don't work with me because I'm your friend. Work with me because I'm going to be able to do the best job for you. Right. There's a difference in that sort of policy. In the state of Minnesota, it's 90 hours of coursework to become a real estate agent. It is easy to become a realtor. It's easy to become a real estate agent. It's easy to become a realtor. And from when I did it, which was over 10 years ago now, the 90 hours, there was not 1 hour dedicated to marketing. There was not 1 hour dedicated to how negotiations go and working those things out. And I'm sure you can agree with me, D. Like, there are agents that get licensed and they're like, you need to have a market expert or a negotiation expert or marketing expert like me. And it's like, you've been licensed for all of 6 minutes and all of a sudden you're a market expert. And we all start somewhere. So I don't want like new agents to read this. And there are agents that have been licensed 4 months. I trust more than 40-year veterans, right? It's about like being honest and real about those things. And the stuff that you see on social media that other agents will post, there's agents in my city that I see post TikToks, post videos regularly. And if I look at their transaction count, they do 5 deals a year. Now, so, and it's important to do marketing, but you also have to make sure that that person actually knows what they're talking about, so that when problems come up, you have someone who can go to bat for you.
Exactly. It's funny how you use the analogy that we're the shock absorbers. I always tell people, I said, I'm your bus driver. And it's kind of funny. I was like, my job is to avoid as many potholes as possible, but there are some roads you can't avoid them because they're everywhere. But what we do is we try to minimize the jolt that it comes from there. I've actually had several clients who said, oh, clients and friends. Actually, they were friends first. And they were like, well, we don't like using friends to do a job. And I said, I completely understand that. But axing me before you even give me the opportunity to show you how I work is doing a disservice to yourself. Because interview me along with 3 other realtors. I mean, interview as many people as you want to. Said, but what you're looking for is somebody who's going to have the expertise to do their job, who knows how to get you through this transaction as quickly and as easily as possible, and then to be able to take care of the things that come up. I don't believe in, if you hide something, as you say, or you run away from a problem, it makes the problem larger. Because what did our moms always used to tell us? Tell me where you are, because in my brain, you're dead somewhere in a ditch wearing dirty underwear. So you always want to make sure that your communication is spot on, because then that way your folks know what's happening. They're never guessing. I have a weekly phone call with every single client to go over what happened during the week. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not talking to them but once a week, but I have a phone call specifically set up every single Tuesday or Wednesday to talk to my sellers or my buyers about, this is what has happened this week. This is what we found this week. And this is what, if it goes outside of our communications on a daily basis. Now, responsiveness in our industry seems like a basic, yet unfortunately, it's become a commodity. It's become a rare commodity. So why has it become such a rare commodity in these day and age, in your opinion?
Oh, well, it doesn't click with me, but
True.
If I were speculating, a good portion of real estate agents are part-timers.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of agents really don't have a process, right? And what I mean by that is, like, when you reach out to them, they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, right? They're just doing it that way. But like, if someone, reaches out to me, and I'm assuming you have the same model, like, I know exactly the process I have on place for intaking a client. First thing it is, we set up a 10 to 15 minute intake call where I learn a little bit about your situation. We talk about those things. I explain, if I think I can help you, or if I can't, or if I think it's not a good fit, we have that. And then I schedule a sit down where I sit down with all the parties involved and I go through, a quick little, like, what are you working on trying to do? Refresh my memory. What's important to you about those things. And then from there, the education bit. So if it's a buyer, different types of financing that's available to you, what makes up a mortgage payment, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're moving from out of state, how do taxes affect things, what to expect when we're going out on showings, how do we make a good competitive offer, what to expect contract to close, right? If you're a seller, I always tell my sellers, selling is a series of questions, right? Number one always is, what's my homework, right? And what do I got to do to get it ready, right? How do we handle showings when they come up? How do we handle offers when they come in? And then what to expect transaction to close, right? Handling all those different things with people. So I know my process. I know what I offer buyers. I know what I offer my sellers, and I know how to do it in a way that makes sense. An agent who's just like, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? They don't have a plan, right? They no process. That there's just I don't think agents get licensed with the intention of failing. I don't think anyone does that, right? But from a lot of brokerages are doing it the old school way. They're not really educating their agents. Those agents aren't treating their business like a business. And if they aren't when you reach out to them, if they don't have a plan and a process in place for representing you, going through those things, it's going to be a headache. Now, so, why do people struggle with responsiveness? I don't know. I had a buyer who reached out to me yesterday, and apparently I was recommended on a bunch of Reddit platform things, right? And they reached out to me that way, and they said, we reached out to 3 different agents, and you're the only one to call back. Now, typically I would have answered the phone, but I was in a listing appointment. But I called him back within 15 minutes, and you're like, you're the only one to call back, right? I got him set up with a lender. We got an appointment set up. And while I was on the call here with you, the lender just called me. I'm sure I've got some sort of an update there. But why? Even in any sort of contractor business, if someone wants to start a business and they will just answer the phone, my God, you will have a successful business. Like, it is wild to me, right? I mean, how many times have you called an agent to have a conversation and then they text you back saying, have a phone conversation with me? Especially in negotiations, tonality, personality, I think are so critical to the success of making a negotiation work. And you have to have an agent who can do those things. The same thing with negotiations. What's your process for having a conversation with the agent on the other side? What's your process for submitting an offer? Or are you just going to be one of those agents that just emails me over an offer that's in 8 different PDF files and I got to click on every single one to fix right? Make it easy. Make it easy for people to say yes. I don't know. It's mind-boggling to me, the lack of responsiveness, lack of communication from other agents, but it's very real. Very first real estate conference I ever went to was a rally in my local market. The trainer said this. He said, it's not so much I'm a great real estate agent as it is the rest of you just suck.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. I was cackling.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, we're dealing with, what seems to me basics. And, I think somebody told me once that this becomes 900 pounds the moment that you have to make a phone call. And in today's day and age, I know everybody would prefer text. I actually like talking to people and, have a conversation with people, because you get nuance and you get, when people don't understand something and you hear that pause at the end, you understand, okay, something didn't make sense. Tell me what didn't click. Help me, let me help you out. And yeah, every single person should have some kind of process. When our buyers start with us, we have just a step-by-step, what to expect when you're buying a home. And I mean, yes, it's 13 steps, but when you're really looking at this, is probably a really small version, but it gives people a starting point. We do the exact same thing with sellers, so people can kind of understand, these are just the little bit of guts that we put inside of a folder that we give to everybody, just so they can kind of get a hold of something that they only do every 5 to 7 years. I mean, I do have some clients that actually buy and sell a lot more than that. We have investors that buy and sell a lot more than that. But on average, Most people are only going to buy a home and the statistics have changed. It used to be every 5 to 7 years. Now it's every 7 to 10. And so if you're doing this once every 10 years, dude, the only thing you remember is closing day when you got the keys. You remember the feeling that came. You don't remember this piece. You don't remember all these steps. I just helped a client close last month, just less than a week ago. And she goes, I know I bought something just 5 years ago, but I don't remember it being this hard, because you don't remember those pieces. Most folks don't remember that. So having a process that you can give to someone that breaks it down and makes it bite-sized, that, okay, I'm expected to do this. Or a lot of, like I said, the misinformation out there that most people are thinking, okay, well, I have to have 6 figures to have a down payment to be able to buy a house, and you actually are able to go, no, it actually isn't that bad. Here's where we can be. It basically helps buyers and sellers be able to make this complicated process manageable. And that's what we're here for. What was it that I think it was the movie Patch Adams with Robin Williams, where he said a doctor is supposed to be a resource that you go to, a friend who's knowledgeable. And I see real estate agents as the same thing. We are supposed to be the learned friend who can make this process not so scary. You deal with a lot of folks in regards to, not only listing, buying, selling, investing, but when you're dealing with someone who's moving from out of state, it's especially if they've never lived in your state before, that's extremely daunting. What are some hidden pitfalls that you see, one with relocators, or if the relocators come in, they're buying sight unseen?
Yeah, so just pitfalls. If I'm just talking about pitfalls, I would say just getting pre-approved with some online lender.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes I get those phone calls and they're like, "Oh, I already got a head start for you, Alex. I did you a favor, and I got pre-approved with this lender," and they ended up being, Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage, or Toto, or something that's in a whole other state. And I'm like, "Well, that was a great exercise." To be clear, real estate's local, right? If there's a problem that comes up in a transaction, I like it if there is a door that I can go over and knock on and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Right? Because if you just got pre-approved with a lender that's out in West Virginia, they know they don't have to be as responsive to me because I'm not going to get on a flight and fly to West Virginia, right? And other agents, again, we know, like you said earlier, 1% of agents seem to be doing the majority of business, right? There's a good chance that if we put an offer together and they know the agent on the other side, they know the lender on the other side of the transaction, they're going to feel, the listing agent knows that person, they're going to feel much more comfortable in working with you, right? Because they're going to be like, "Oh, I've worked with this lender before. I've seen their name before. They're local. They understand the taxes. They're going to make sure things are going to work out a little bit better for you." That is the better route for a consumer to go through. Again, I would just, say copy paste the information I said about making sure you find the right agent, right? Like again, just going online, and you got to be careful with that stuff too, because again, the large teams, make it seem like they're doing the majority of business, but that you're just likely to get passed off. Make sure the agent you hire is going to be the one representing you. And number one's got to be the pre-approval thing. Then understanding the market as a whole, right? I'm sure it's the same in your market. Like some neighborhoods are different in how quickly they sell, in price point and condition than others, right? Yep. And you have to understand the specifics of those things.
So, like you've talked about the team aspect. In my opinion, one of the online platforms that is super easy to use, that I know everybody uses it, you have to think of them as almost the number one mega team. Because how many times has somebody gone, "Ooh, I fell in love with this house online and I want to go see it. And all I have to do is click this button and Johnny on the spot shows up." Well, that's not supposed to happen because again, what did we say? After the NAR lawsuit, everybody's supposed to have some kind of representation, whether it's a showing agreement or a buyer agency agreement. But that is like, this online platform is the number one mega team out there because they have so many other agents buying into them. I mean, I personally have never spent any money with them, and they started the same year I did. And I've never spent money with them, never will spend money with them, just because I, while I know it's an easy platform for everybody to use, and I don't discourage clients from using it because I know they're gonna, but I do let them know, hey, when you do use this platform, make sure you call me because it could be incorrect information and there could be major, holes in the information. And so we try to protect our clients from, again, this number one mega team, and they're number one mega team everywhere.
Well, they're selling the prospective buyer's information is what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you said, these other teams, like they're buying these things. And it's one of the
Correct.
reasons why I said earlier, they're going broke.
Yeah.
Right? The top agents on those teams have built a referral business and they're working with people who are reaching out to them directly. The mega
Correct.
teams are paying thousands of dollars a month. And then what they're doing is they're offloading those clients to the other agents on their team to work with. Right.
One of the teams here said they spend $60,000 a month. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what most people make in a year. That's just astronomical. I can't even imagine
what a direct representation agent can spend money on that's more efficient. What these large teams are spending on those things, and those teams, like, they're probably like office staff, office space, all the lead generation, the educational bits, or you could do it. You could be the person who's actually representing the client. You can save a lot of those expenses and spend it on actively marketing on behalf of your clients versus trying to go out there trying to chase new business, which is what they have to do. They have a churn and burn policy. And the only way for them to make money is to keep feeding these other agents on their team, which is subtracting time from them, subtracting money from them. It's not necessarily helping the client. And it's a completely different.
So when your buyers are looking online, because we already know 100% of people start their search online, it's easy to fall in love with a house. How can buyers be taught to separate their emotion from a home? Because everybody can fall in love with a house, but actually learn to separate their emotions from the mathematical reality of a deal.
Yeah. Well, first off, if you're just calling an agent online to schedule a showing to go look at a house, like you said, there's rules against that now unless you have some sort of a written agreement. A professional agent's not going to do that, in my opinion. They're not. Back in the early business, my very first broker used to call them Pop-Tart agents. They'll just pop up and show you a house. Like that agent needs to sell you that house. Otherwise, they're not getting paid. Like, a professional agent's going to sit down with you and they're going to explain why you need to hire them as your agent so that you have someone who is going to be available to you as needed and work with you directly, right? Not just some random, third-party website agent who is just going to randomly show up and show you a house, right? That's the wrong way, right? And you need to have a whole plan. You need to have a strategy for approaching the market. You need to know what to expect. And especially for any buyer or seller out there, I tell them that the number one thing holding most sellers and buyers back is actually the fear of the unknown, right? And if you're scheduling a showing with an agent, you just skip like 5 steps. Right. And you need to know what to expect. And a good agent's going to take the time to break all that down for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the questions that we ask our clients at every single one. What's the fear that you have? And usually from sellers is the house isn't ever going to sell. And from the buyers is I fall in love with one and then we can't get it. And we talk about trying to, kind of dismantle those fears up front and give them the realities of what happens to that. Because once you get rid of the fear, it kind of makes the process a lot better. one of the things that we've been dealing with a lot recently is that we're seeing a lot of folks that are dealing with their parents' homes. So they're inheriting properties, and there's so much emotion that comes with that and all the logistics that are with that piece as well. What should be the first step for your families when you're wanting to protect the value of the estate with them?
Yeah. It's funny you ask that. I actually specialize in probate, estate sales, and that's one of my main things. So, and that is a different game for a lot of these sellers because they have been through the ringer with, getting the house cleaned out, dealing with all the paperwork, the loss of a loved one, friend, family member. And sometimes there's some emotions invested in there. Their parents own the house for 20, 30 years. They were raised there. I had one recently where like her mother was raised in the house, and they were selling the grandparents' house. And it's an emotional thing for them, but it's also like at the end of their rope. So they're like, and sometimes it's expected that someone's going to pass or you're going to inherit or someone's cognitive abilities are declining. And sometimes it's sudden. And, which is worse, it's hard to say, right? Both can be bad, right? Both can be horrible, right? Especially if it's a cognitive decline, right? And the house falls into disrepair or maintenance, and now we have to come out there and have to say, well, yeah, the neighbor's house down the street sold for $70,000 more, 100,000 more, whatever. But, there's holes in the walls everywhere here. These appliances 25 years ago, their water heaters leaking, like how do we handle those things? And then working with the seller is also different because a lot of the times they have constituents that they have to represent, whether it's an executor, an administrator, maybe they just went through probate, how do they handle those things? And sometimes that can take 6 months to 9 months. And, in the midst of all of that, the house falls into disrepair, insurance lapses, how do we work out those things? And then, getting it on the market and selling it, and then making sure that the agent on the other side actually knows how to handle one of these sales. Because a lot of them people can be really cruel over a keyboard. And I'll get feedback from agents, but like, oh, what a dump. And I'm like, yeah, someone got sick and passed away. And, things fell to the wayside. That's why it's priced where it's at. Try to have a little bit of, understanding and heart in these things, right? Like, and it's like, that's why it is what it is, and handling these things. It's a different experience for these sellers is what I would really say. So the way that we approach those things is got to be different than what a traditional sale is going to be like.
I've always said to folks, as a lot of people have found, when I got started in this, the weekend that I passed my real estate class in North Carolina, similar to Rochester, we actually have a 75-hour course to get in, and then we have 90 hours after the fact. So we actually have 165 hours that we have to take total to get our license. But when the weekend that I passed my class, my daughter passed away. And that's how I started my career. And so I tell people, I said, pain, whether you're expecting it or whether it's sudden, you still, as a human being, you expect tomorrow. And the pain is always there. And so walking through someone through this, it amazes me how cruel people can be when they don't have to stand in front of you and say the word.
I read in a book recently, they said that eye contact keeps people civilized.
Yeah, it really does. That's a good quote.
I love it. So
when families are divided whether or not to keep or sell the home, how does market data help bridge that gap to make the best decision?
I always tell consumers that the online data and analytics is about 6 to 8 weeks behind what the market is currently doing. So it's going to take that long for a house to sell. All right. And making sure that we have accurate real time what's happening currently, a feet in the street experience is what I call it. Like actually someone who's doing it now, not someone who's focused on data from 6 to 8 weeks ago. And that when we're pulling comps, it's like 6 months worth of closed data. So we're really looking 7, 8 months ago. and is making sure they understand where things are at the current moment. One of the things I tell my sellers, like, we don't know what's going to happen when we go to market. Like, we can hope, we can make the best predictions, we can go with the best strategy, and then we can get kicked in the chin moment we go up on the market, and we can have everything done right. We list it and get no showings in 4 days. Right now, it rarely happens, but it could happen. It has happened. I had a price reduction with the seller today. We haven't had a showing in 3 weeks. It's tough, right? Yep. You know what? There's no. That's one other thing I tell people. Like, these agents out there that tell me that they're selling houses in like 2 days all the time, or I've never lost an offer. Like if there's no one I know who's bad in 1,000, right? If you are bad in 1,000 as a real estate agent, you are not doing enough business. Right. So even these data and analytics where I hear consumers are like, well, their sales time on market is lower. I'm like, well, there's probably a reason for that. Right. Or I had one like about 6 months ago. He was like, I'm a luxury agent. Yeah. You sell 5 houses a year. Like, I sell 5 luxury house units a year too. Right. Like, we do the same amount of business. I just do the same types of business, but I still do 10 times more. Right. So it's a different, like, the language people uses matters. Data analytics is important, but even so, like, the consumer needs to not focus. I spent a lot of time actually trying to get my sellers to not focus on the numbers so much. I need to walk away with $500,000. I'm like, we're going to walk away with the most that we can get for this. Is what we're going to do, right? Is it going to get you what you want? If you tie your emotions and your strategy to one specific thing, that's not going to work out well for you, because in negotiations, we can get kicked in the face, right? The appraiser comes in there and says, I could tell you we could sell your house for $850,000 today. But, based off of all the comps here, we're looking at 810. And if that's the case and we sell it, for 810, great. If we sell it for 825, even better. But what's going to happen when the appraiser gets out there and says house is worth 810, right? I know it's the buyer's problem, but it's also your problem, because any buyer that's going to be buying that house is going to run into the same issue. And I'm like, you might want that, right? But no one's, it's not realistic. And that's one of the big problems with real estate is there's so much, fakeness to our industry. There's a lot of lead magnets out there to make you seem like that's the best way to go about something. And it's really just to get someone to fill out your information online so they can start, soliciting you. And I mean, we can talk about HGTV and everything as much as we want, how like that's not real. And you know what's funny about that stuff to me, D, is like, this industry is crazy enough as is that we could create some Tiger King level Netflix series and that, like, if people knew what we actually dealt with, it would be completely like, but then like, I'll show you 3 homes and I've already pre-negotiated an agreement with this. That doesn't happen. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah, most people don't realize that the HGTV, and I haven't been on HGTV, but I have been interviewed for HGTV several times. But the agents and the clips that you see, it's like, we've shown you 3 houses and we're going to put an offer in. Typically, that couple already bought that house. They bought it 4 months ago. They're actually showing you their house and their neighbor's house. And then they show you one just randomly. And the one that they bought, they actually say they bought it for a lot less than what they bought it for. And it's just, there's so much stuff in the background that nobody thinks of.
That have been on those shows, and they tell me it's all scripted.
Yeah, oh yeah, every single bit of it.
It's all scripted. It's not real.
Yeah. So looking at the current landscape, and what major market shift should everyday buyers and sellers be preparing for right now?
Well, in the way that consumers are finding properties and researching properties and finding agents, my experience is that AI citations, not necessarily AI itself is shaking up everything, but AI citations are changing up a lot of things. If you had asked me, a year ago, where do people get the most inaccurate information from, I'd be like, Google. You ask me today, it's gonna be like, ChatGPT is a great tool, right? But the 20% of the time that it's wrong, it is really wrong. And that is a problem, right? And oftentimes I'll get people to like look at like your own industry. Here in Rochester, Minnesota, we're home of the Mayo Clinic, so we got a lot of medical professionals. I'm like, you're a resident, you're a nurse, you're some sort of professional in that area. I'm like, how do you like it when a consumer comes to you like, well, ChatGPT said, yeah, I've had situations where people like will pull up stuff. I'm like, that was a great tool. I'm telling you, I know what's actually happening here right now. How do I know AI isn't going to replace real estate agents? It's because of things like that, right? Like that's not how it works. Oh, this is going to cost me $10,000. It's going to cost you $700, right? Or a seller will come out to me and they'll be like, well, I want to be competitive in the market, so I want to offer this amount of commission to a buyer's agent. And I'm like, well, in our market, we don't really offer. We let the buyer write it into the purchase agreement, right? We figure that out. But also the number that you threw out at me, that I don't ever see that. Not competitive, right? Like, or like, this is common commission in the area. I'm like, well, there's no, standard. Like, I'm like, that doesn't really exist. But like, here's what I charge, and here's where like my bottom line is on where these things, and this is why, right? You can go online and it'll tell you this is what agents charge, and this is the way the market goes. But real estate is local, right? And you got to be careful with it. Why is it that the Zestimate is wrong all the time? Not all the time, but a lot of the time, right? It's because it's a large national geographical algorithm. It's not specifically tied to our local area. Right? And so today, one of the biggest causes of misinformation is actually going to be AI citations and artificial intelligence, right? Is working with that.
For anybody jumping into the market today, what's the best approach to maximize their real estate wealth over the next decade? And I know that's a really broad question.
Best time to buy real estate was, 8 years ago. Second best time now. I don't like. I don't know what it is. There's so much data and analytics behind that. Stop listening to the YouTube doom scrollers that are telling you that the market's crashing every other month. Right? I can show you. I've had people message me on some of my posts that I've made online. Like, market's crashing. Next year I'll be able to buy it for pennies on the dollar. And what I should do, I'm not petty enough to do it, but what I should do is like screenshot that stuff and then like reach out to them every year and be like, hey, just so you know, market's gone up.
Gone up this much? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of these, they've started because real estate is a great place to build wealth. Whether you're owning it, selling it, talking about it, being involved in it, it's a great place to create wealth. And so we hear from all these different people who are like, okay, this town right here has gone down 15%. I'm like, okay, on that one house, maybe. And are you looking at that one house that they bought in 21 where they threw money at them because they wanted the box and they need to decide, do they hold it or do they rent it? What's the situation? So I guess that's one of the things is don't necessarily believe everything that you see on the internet. What was it? Don't believe everything you see on the internet, said Abraham Lincoln. Isn't that little quote? But if somebody wants to maximize their wealth, your advice is what? Buy yesterday?
Yeah. That's one thing. Don't blow the budget on unnecessary things. Don't over customize your house. If you do, that'll hurt your resale. Make sure you keep your house maintained properly. And if you're not everyone needs to be an expert on taking care of their house, but they need to have someone who is, and they need to know how to hire that the proper way. Like, I think that's the main things I would say there.
Yeah, I tell all of our clients, I said, very rare people do this. Even real estate agents don't do this. But once a year, you literally are supposed to start from the bottom or the top, either one, and work your way all the way through your house. And you're supposed to check on everything once a year, at least. Said, when it comes to your HVAC, you should have somebody service it twice a year. So that's one of those odd birds that you actually have to do it every 6 months. But even real estate agents don't do it. But once a year, look over your house. How's your roof looking? How's your water heater doing? What does your crawl space look like? Or if you're on a slab, so much better. If you're in a basement, what does the basement look like? But once a year, tour your house with really critical eyes. And then That's how you actually pay real close attention to your home.
Yes. Yes. And I got to run. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Alex, thank you so much. I was going to say, thank you so much for being part of us. I greatly appreciate it. We have all your socials. They will set everything up and then send it to you. It's probably going to be about a month or so, and they'll post it out everywhere and send you all the reels.
Love it. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of the week ahead.
You do the same.
Bye now.
Thanks for joining me on Make Yourself at Home. I hope you found insights and inspiration to help you navigate your real estate journey with confidence. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share this show with your friends, because everyone deserves to feel at home. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep making moves that matter.